So I want to welcome all of you. I'm Dr. Tammy Basford, and today we're going to have focus on health as another aspect of adulting, what it means to me in my future. So we're going to talk about health and wellness. Next slide, please. We've already thanked the Arizona Developmental Disabilities Planning Council for helping fund this workshop series. Next slide. And in addition to myself, I'm going to have my partner, colleague, and co-Special Olympics participant, Mr. Ken Kundert, presenting on some of his experiences in learning to be in charge of our health. Next slide, please. I'll introduce myself. I'm a family medicine physician and have been a family medicine physician at the university for 30 years or more. So I've had a lot of conversations with people about their health. I am faculty at the Sonoran USED, and I direct a program, a health program for adults and youth with intellectual developmental disabilities, which is embedded in our family medicine teaching clinic. I also volunteer with Special Olympics Arizona. Ken, would you like to share a few things about yourself?
Yes, I am an athlete for outreach for Special Olympics. I also volunteer with Dr. Basford at the health clinics at Special Olympics to help promote healthy eating habits and exercise. And I also go to the state capitol and with Dr. Basford every year to help raise awareness for Special Olympics. And I'm also a health care aide, and that is my profession. And that's all I have to say right now.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Next slide, please. So you've gotten some pages from the Future Planning, a Roadmap of Our Future Wishes workbook. On pages 25 to 29, it alludes to health being important, but today we're also going to cover other tools you can download or use on websites to help you plan for taking charge of your own health care. Next slide, please. This is pages 25 and 26, which you should have gotten in the mail. There isn't a lot of specific detail in the planning workbook about health, but you can see that health is one of the 7 things that's considered important in terms of bringing you joy and making you feel good. And of course, as a doctor, I think that being in good health is a really important part of letting you live the life you want to live and feel well while you're doing it. Next slide, please. The first thing I wanted to do is get an idea what health means to all of you. And to do that, I would like to use the word cloud, which means going to the menti.com site that Jeff described earlier and entering the code that you see on the screen, 373898. And what I'd like you to do is just pick one word that captures what health means to you. When you hear me say good health or health, what does that mean to you? And as you enter your words, we're going to start seeing a picture form on the screen. Happiness, great. What you guys will notice is some words will be bigger and some will be smaller. The more people that choose a particular word for health, those words will be bigger. Balance, that's another good one. Exercise, always happy to hear that. We'll just give a few minutes to let people get their words in. As you can see, people think of different things when they think of health. So what might mean health to one person isn't always the first thing that occurs to another person. Now we're seeing a real nice range of what health means to different people. Being active, being strong, being well balanced, having energy. All these things are important aspects of health. What I like about this is all the words are the same size, so everybody's sort of volunteering their own personal idea of what health means. Strong is going into the lead. Loving. Emotional health and loving is also a really important part of total health, so I'm really glad that someone added that. Water is important. We're just seeing lots of really, really good. It seems like you guys have a good idea of what health is and that you see it as something important. Physical movement. A lot of people are looking at water and strong and happy as important. Physical movement and activity as important. It makes you happy. It gives you energy. Here in Arizona, water is always an important aspect of health.
Yes.
Okay, next slide, please. So today we're going to think about what's the most important thing to you about your health. We know now you've had a chance to think about what health means to you, but what is it about that healthy, good health that's going to be most important to you? We're going to have you make a list of some things that you're going to need to do to reach your health goals, and think of some things that you might need to learn or get help with in order to reach your health goals. Next slide, please. So today we're going to think about why you want to be healthy. Ken is going to share a bit about how he learned to take charge of his own health. Ken is just like a lot of folks in the audience. He grew up here in Tucson his whole life, went to school here in Tucson schools, and was educated through special education for many of those years. And we're going to look at some tools that your families can use to help you get ready to be more in charge of your own health as you mature. Next slide, please. So first, we're going to show a video of Ken and I talking about how he developed being in charge of his own health when he was younger. And this video was created a little earlier this week when we had a discussion. So now that we've talked a little bit about health goals, Ken is going to talk a little bit about his experiences in taking charge of his health and setting health goals for him. Ken, do you remember what it was like to start taking more charge of your own health?
Well, in the beginning, it was difficult because my health was not good when I was growing up, and I had to learn how to do a lot of things. I had to learn how to take my medications by myself without being told to take them or anything, and so I had to learn how to do that. And then I also had to learn how to deal with the doctors. That was difficult because a lot of doctors didn't want to listen to me. They thought they knew more, and they kind of brushed me off, I felt.
So when you were learning to take your own medications, how did you start learning that? How did you do it initially, and what helped you remember to take your own medicines?
Well, initially, my mom was reminding me to take them every day, and at every time I needed to take them. And the way I learned how to take them by myself was to take them out of the kitchen cabinet and put them in the bathroom where I always saw them. Because out of sight, out of mind, and when they're in the kitchen cabinet, I didn't see them and my mom would always have to remind me. So that's how I learned how to take my medicines by myself. So that I'm and then later on I ended up putting them into pill boxes because I ended up having a lot of medications to take. And then that helped me also.
So tell me a little bit more about the doctor's appointments. How did you get yourself ready for a doctor's appointment when you first started out?
Well, I had heard that if you're having a problem and you wanted your doctors to talk to you about them, you should write a note. And I would always take a note and with me and give it to the doctor and say, okay, doctor, this is what's wrong. I need to talk to you about it and 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 get something done about it. And that's how I did it.
Did you ever have to practice how
I
you?
I did. I would practice with my mom before I went to the doctors, talking to the doctors and saying what was wrong with me because I wasn't very good at that time speaking, and the practice helped me verbalize better with the doctor. So
Cool. And when did you start taking scheduling your own appointments with the doctor?
well, there was a time when my mom said, you know, Ken, I'm not going to be around forever, and you need to take charge of your life and everything. And she says you can start with your doctor's appointments. And I said okay. And so at that point in time, I started going to the doctors. She would drive me, but then after each appointment, I would schedule my own doctor's appointments, and she didn't have to do that anymore. And that's how I started scheduling them.
I'm going to ask you a few questions about when you started working, because you really started working at an early age. What did you have to do to when you had to call in sick to work? How did that work? How did you learn when to call, when not to call?
Well, when I started working in a place that required you to call off when you were sick, they told me if you were throwing up and if you had a fever, then you should call off. But then there were other problems too, like I had seizures and I would have to call off 2 or 3 days after every seizure I had. And so I did that. And then I also decided, you know, if my stomach is not feeling good, I need to call off. And I did that too. And you know, it was because of the employer mentioning, hey, you can't come in if you're sick. So I took it upon myself to say, oh, okay, I will do that. And it's worked out pretty good.
Where are you working now? Tell us just a little bit about the different places that you've worked, Ken.
Okay, well, initially, well, the first job I had, I worked in a a place that made cinnamon rolls. But then I moved on to a retirement community called Broadway Proper, and I worked there for 28 years. And they decided after 28 years they were going to downsize. And they downsized. Of course, I was one of the first ones to go because I was one of the original employees there. And so I was the first one to go. And then I moved on to this job I have now at Right at Home. And I'm an in-home healthcare aide. and I help take care of retired veterans and help them clean their homes, wash their laundry, do their dishes, and cook their meals.
And they're getting a pretty good cook because you were a cook at the retirement home for most of the time you worked there, right?
Yes, I was a cook for about, at the retirement home, this one that I was at the longest, I was a cook for about 26 years.
You
Yeah.
went from dishwasher to cook in a few years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how about when you first started feeling, say, sick to your stomach? How did you learn what medicines that you could take without calling a doctor?
I would call my mom. She had always said, you know, if you're not feeling good and you need help, always call. And so I did. And if I had a stomach ache and needed to know what medicines to take, I would call her. And sometimes if I didn't have it, she would bring it over. And then I wouldn't have to go out after it.
And then how did you learn how to take that over and do it yourself without having to call her?
Well, you know, if that ever happened again, and I was out of medicine, you know, I always kept the bottles, and I would take the bottles to the pharmacy and tell them I need this medicine, and they would help me out and show me where everything was. So that's the pretty much the gist of it.
So you kept the bottles that your mom brought, so the next time you'd know what kind of medicine to use for, say, a tummy ache or a runny nose or something.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a pretty good system.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you had seizures at work. How did you handle that with your coworkers?
Well, it wasn't so easy, you know. I would be asked questions all the time. And one time I had 15 seizures in one day. And then I was taken out to the hospital in an ambulance. And when I came back in about I came back to work in about 3 weeks, and they started asking questions. And then some of the employees knew because they had family members who had seizures. But those who didn't, I would explain it like it's like your brain waves, your electrodes in your brain is throwing an electrical storm and causing you to have the seizures. And they were like, I didn't think of that, you know, and it was neat to be able to get a point across so you didn't feel so bad afterwards, you know.
Yeah, so you were able to explain your own medical problem really clearly to your employers and your coworkers,
Yes.
so they wouldn't be scared by
And
it.
they were very accepting of that.
That's great. That's great. And now you're driving. You didn't always drive, but now you can drive because your seizures have been so well
As a
controlled.
teenager, I started driving, but I had some seizures, and they made me stop driving. And so I didn't drive until I was 40 years old when I received a car from my friend's mom who had passed away. And my mom scheduled me some driving lessons because I hadn't driven since I was 19. And after the first lesson, the teacher told my parents that I didn't need any more lessons because I knew what I was doing. I was holding on to the steering wheel properly, looking in all the mirrors as I drove. I always turned the turn signals on, and and my parents were just so surprised.
That's so great.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the health goals you had to set for yourself and then you met over time were to take your own medicines, make your own doctor's appointments, learn how to talk to the doctor,
Yeah.
um, learn what medicines to take, over-the-counter medicines, you know, that you would get from the pharmacy when you were sick, learn how to call in to
Yeah.
work when you were sick, and then also feel comfortable explaining whatever your health problems you had to people as you needed to, whether that was a doctor, someone at the pharmacy, or even your coworkers. Have you
Yes.
had any special health issues that have come up?
Well, back when I was about 30, no, about 40 years old, I I became diabetic. And that was kind of challenging because I had to learn how to give myself insulin, and and that wasn't such a problem, but it was the pricking my fingers to do the blood glucose every day, and the fingers just got so sore. And so I started using my thumb, and my thumb made it more bearable because it was thicker than the fingers, and so I overcame that way. But I'm still trying to lose weight and get off all the medicines, because the doctor keeps telling me if you lose weight, you can be taken off a lot of these medicines. And I'm like, that would be great.
So you have lost a fair amount of weight, haven't you, Ken, already?
Yes, over the last year, I lost 70 pounds.
Congratulations. That's really amazing. How did you do it?
Well, that was interesting because I was told I needed to cut things out of my diet. And, the doctor kept telling me I needed to cut out all the carbs, all the sugars, all the pastas, potatoes, rice, and all this stuff. Well, I didn't want to do that at first
Mm.
because, who wants a pot roast without mashed potatoes and gravy? I don't. So, but, over time, I've come to think about it and say, yeah, I really do need to do this. And I started cutting potatoes and rice and pasta and breads and a lot of sugar out of my diet. And that was hard to cut the sugar out because growing up, we always had dessert on the table after dinner. And so I have cut down the amount of sugar to only like 2 desserts a day. I mean, a week, excuse me. And plus that on top of cutting out the potatoes and everything, I have lost the 70 pounds.
That's great. Has exercise helped with that at all?
It has. The combination of exercise and cutting all these things out. I don't do a lot of physical exercise because I just can't do it. I'm getting too old. And so I go out and I walk anywhere from 4 to 5 miles a day after I get off work.
That's pretty good exercise.
Yeah.
And you changed what you eat for dessert now too. What do you usually eat for a sweet treat now?
My sweet is my go-to sweet is the Healthy Choice chocolate fudge bars, and that is my favorite.
Sounds like you've done a really good job with your health, Ken, and you didn't learn it all at once. You kind of built up your ability to take care of your health over.
Yeah, it was over time. Everything was over time. You have to start in the beginning and end up over time, gradually learning things. And it's like you do that going to school. And this medical thing was like having to go to school again.
Thanks for sharing this with us, Ken.
You're welcome.
Next slide, please. Oh, wait, is this Okay, we're on the right side. So we've talked a little bit, we've heard a little bit from Ken about how he figured out how to take over parts of his health over years, really. And we kind of heard what was important to him about his health, controlling his weight and diabetes and controlling his seizures being two things. What's the most important thing to all of you about your health? If you could think of one thing that you think is the most important thing for you and your health, what would it be? For me, for example, it would be having a healthy weight. So what's that one thing for you? And if you could go to the menti.com and add some words, we can see what the whole group thinks. Feeling good, exercise, workout, eating less, good mental health, really important part of good health. Exercise looks like for a lot of people, being able to exercise is important to them about their health. Living a long, healthy life, right? Can't do that. Controlling your allergies. Feeling good. If you're feeling good, it's in part because you have good health, good physical health and mental health. Seizure control. So for some people, being able to control their seizures is a really important part of their health and helps them do a lot of other things they want to do. And just feeling good looks like a really big one there. Probably the biggest word there. That means that most people put something like feeling good. Okay. Well, thanks for that. We're going to think about these things and how we can achieve these things, how we can achieve feeling good, how we can achieve being able to exercise over the rest of the time that we're together today. Can we go to the next slide, please? So each of you have picked one thing that's important to you about your health. Can you think of two things that you need to do? For example, my health goal is to have a healthy weight. So I know the two things that I need to do to reach my health goal is to eat less sugar and walk every day. When you think about the thing that's important to you about your health, what are the two things that you need to do to reach that goal? For example, to control your seizures, what are the two things you know that you've got to do every day to control your seizures? Or to have good mental health, what are the important things for you? If you could take a minute to think about those things, then I'm going to invite you to share one or two of those things with the group, either by raising your hand and having Jeff call on you, unmute you, or if you prefer not to talk, you can also type in your things on the chat box and Jeff will read those out loud. So if you've thought of a couple things that you know you need to do for your health, just go ahead and either type them in or raise your hand. You can either raise it like that, or you can hit the little raise hand button, which is in the chat box, I think.
So Jeremiah Taylor says self-regulate behavior.
Okay, good. So that's a really important thing to work on. And probably that supports a lot of goals, both mental health and physical health, if you can regulate your behavior. That's kind of key to everything. If you think about behavior, including what you choose to eat, how much you exercise, how you handle strong emotions, that's a good one.
Okay, so it looks like Robert Kirsten has raised his hand, and I'm going to ask you to unmute so you can ask or make your comment.
Eat healthy and run.
Those are the two things that you need to do. And I think we're seeing some folks typing that as well.
Right. So Themis says exercise more and eat less carbs like breads. Nitwit says portion control and exercise. Nasali says eating healthy. Sunshine says, for mental wellness, I need to take personal timeouts and participate in healthy, positive activities. Sandra says, to learn to cook healthy food and find a friend to exercise with. And then Gina says, read the labels on food.
And that's a good point, the reading the labels on food, because a lot of you have talked about eating healthy. And part of eating healthy is sometimes avoiding too much sugar, too much salt. And those are things that you can figure out by reading the labels on prepared food. If you're cooking yourself some vegetables or eating an apple, you don't have to read the label because those are pretty healthy. But there's a lot of prepared foods, particularly the stuff you buy, you stick in the freezer and then you put in the microwave to cook for yourself, that can have a lot of fat and salt and sugar in them. And so that's important to read those lists. I also like what I'm seeing is that people have chosen physical activity, things like that are more physical, like physical activity, but also taking care of their mental health and giving themselves time out, so that we've kind of got a good combination there of everything you need to do to be healthy. Next slide, please.
Oh, there's one other comment, and when I said Gina, it was actually Mikey. He's
Okay.
using his mom's computer, I believe. And then
Okay, well,
Karen said to make lists so that I'm mindful of what I need to do.
excellent, yeah. And Karen, it looks like that was Karen, and we're going to talk a little bit about making lists and making plans, because that is a good way to keep yourself organized around your health. So we'll get into that a little bit more. Next slide, please, Jeff. So now that we know the things we need to do to reach our health goal, one of the things that we probably need to think about is, do we need to learn how to do any of those things? So for example, if you chose reading labels, do you understand everything on the label? Or is that something that you might need a little education about or a little help with at first? So do we need to learn how to do any of these things? Or do we need help with any of the things that we think we need to do to be healthy? And we're going to have another brief video discussion with Ken and myself to just talk about some things he had to learn when he got a new diagnosis and he needed help with. What was something difficult that you had to do for your health that you needed help with?
Well, at first, let's go back to the diabetes. When I was first diagnosed with diabetes, my doctor wouldn't listen to me. And, I kept telling him, I'm not feeling good. I need help. And he kept saying, oh, if you do this, you do that, you'll be fine. I'm like, I've been doing that and it's not working. And I just had it, I got tired of it. And so I went to my mom and I said, Mom, I need a new doctor. Please help me find one. And she went looking and she called someone that she knew and she scheduled an appointment for me. And this doctor was a really good doctor. And he listened to me and did all the stuff that I was telling him that needed to be done and needed to be checked. And then the sad part is I had to leave him because my insurance changed. So I had to find another doctor. And I lucked out because I went over to Banner Health South and I found the best doctors over there. My primary care doctor listens to me. He does the tests that I asked for. And I have a diabetes doctor, which I never had before. And she works closely with me with the diabetes. And we have been doing a lot of good stuff. And she is very impressed with my weight loss and everything. So everything is good.
So that first doctor, why do you think he wasn't listening to you tell what you needed to manage your diabetes better?
Because I feel he thought he knew best, and he wasn't going to listen to someone up coming in off the street who thought, and he thought I didn't know anything. And that's pretty much why I thought he didn't listen to me. Because doctors go to school, but I went to school, my parents worked in hospitals, and I knew a lot of stuff already. And he just kept pushing me off and wouldn't listen. And that just made me a little angry.
Do you think some doctors have a hard time listening to people with intellectual disabilities?
I do. And it's, you see it all the time. Doctors always kind of look at you like, oh, you don't know anything. You've got a disability, and I'm just going to do this and not do what you ask. And that is not right. You've got to get the right doctor and make sure that doctor is going to listen to you.
And your new doctor sent you to diabetes class, didn't he?
Yes, he did, and I was glad about that because it taught me how what I should and should not be eating, and what I can eat, and which was a lot, but like I said, a lot of stuff was cut out that I didn't like because I love my potatoes. So right now I eat some potatoes, but not as much as I used to. And everything is balancing out in the end.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Ken.
You're welcome.
So Ken shared a time when he really needed his mom to step in and help him find a new doctor. This was just something he wasn't prepared to navigate the first time around. And we all have things that we're less good at and that we might need help with. So what are some things that you can think of that you might need help learning? I gave the example of learning to read labels, but what are some things that you might think of that you might need to learn or need some help with? And if you could think of one or two of those things and share them with the group, either again by raising your hand or by writing something in the chat, that would be great. I see one person saying editing a paper and reading. So kind of being able to express yourself in writing is something that can be really helpful when you're going in to talk to your doctor.
Oh, and it looks like Karen has a comment. I see her raising her hand, so I'm going to ask you to unmute. Go ahead, Karen.
The question I have, so I need to like breathe and like and like tell the truth and work towards to get like a new job, and I should do my tasks like the right way.
So there's a lot of things that you might need to learn. It sounds like maybe breathing and staying calm might be one of them.
Yes.
And that's a thing that a lot of people, a lot of my patients need help with. We tend to refer people to work with therapists or sometimes even classes to learn how to do mindful breathing and sort of learn how to calm themselves down, stress reduction techniques. So that is something where there's help available, just like when Ken needed help and more information about how to deal with his diet, he went to diabetes class. there are classes and therapists that can help people learn how to calm themselves down when they're upset or when they're stressed out. So
Yeah.
thanks. That was a really helpful comment, Karen.
It's Sarah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sarah. I see Karen up here written, so I used my eyes and not my ears that time.
Yeah.
So we had a comment, I need help making phone calls and filling out forms at the doctor's office. Nasali said that she needs help finding a new job. Sandra, or I'm sorry, this is Madison. My apologies. I'm going to write a note to my doctor because I forget what to say, and I need to set times to exercise or I won't do it.
Yes, those are really good points. And there's a lot of the first things that you have to pick up as you're becoming an adult really have a lot to do with organization, you know, setting those times, and communication. How are you going to communicate with your doctor? Are you going to be able to write notes? Is it more working with your mom, dad, or someone else who can help you to learn how to make a telephone call to the doctor and express what you need? Sometimes it helps, even if you're going to make a phone call, to write things down ahead of time so that you remember what you wanted to say. Because sometimes all of us get a little nervous when we first get on the phone, especially if it's not someone we know who answers the phone. So those are all really good points.
And then Nasali added to her original comment that she needs help managing medications by herself.
Yeah, and Ken talked a lot about some of the tricks that he used to manage his medications. And again, it's not something you have to learn overnight. It's something that you need to ask someone to coach you in so that you're both clear that that's the goal, is for you eventually to take over your medications. And some people use their smartphone. They'll set an alarm to remind them to take their medications. Some people use med boxes. I want to move on a little bit now to some tools that you could all use to learn, create a plan for you and your family to start learning some of these things. Next
So
slide.
Tammy, we actually have a raised hand. Do we have time to answer?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, Robert, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
So my thing would be my laundry, my how to learn how to do my get a job, and then another thing would be like my food. It's like I eat so much junk food, it's not even funny. So I'm like, okay, what do I eat? What do I have? What can I not eat? So I'm like, I have to bring it down.
Right, right. Are there people in your life that can help you learn about food?
Yeah, it's I have my friends and my father.
So I think it's good for everybody to think about the people in their lives that can help them learn what they need to learn, whether that's a friend, a teacher, a family member, or even your doctor. And sometimes your doctor can send you to someone like a nutritionist who can help you learn that even a little better. Thanks for bringing that up, Robert. It's very good points. Should we go to the next slide, Jeff?
Will do.
So I'm just going to briefly talk about taking all the different things that go into taking charge of your healthcare. And it's interesting. Go on to the next slide, Jeff. This is a list that came from the Institute for Community Inclusion at Boston Children's Hospital. So it's a big group of experts. But what you're going to notice is that these are all the things that my co-speaker Ken figured out over his lifetime how to do on his own. But I think when we start with a list and a list of tasks, it gets us right away knowing what we're going to need to accomplish over the next few years. So these are some things you might remember from Ken's presentation and your own experience. You got to know about your own health condition. Ken was able to do that. He understood his seizures and he was able to explain them to other people. Know the warning signs that mean you need emergency help. For example, some people have a funny feeling before they have a seizure, and they know that means they need to lay down right away. know who to call in case of an emergency, carry that information with you. Next slide. Then there are things that we've already talked about. How do you learn how to make your own appointments? Writing down questions, and then getting comfortable meeting privately with your doctors and nurses. A lot of us start out meeting with our doctors, of course, with our parents or other support people there. And gradually, as we get more confidence, we learn how to meet with our doctors on our own. Next. It's important to be your own healthcare advocate and speak up if you don't understand what the doctor's saying. And one skill to learn is that if you don't understand an answer, to ask again. It's not your fault when you don't understand an answer. It means the doctor didn't quite explain it right. Now, a lot of us doctors know how to speak medical talk, but maybe not regular person talk so well. It's also important to be able to talk to your doctor about more difficult topics, such as feeling sad, difficulties with relationships, even birth control or other problems, substances that may be going on in your environment. And next slide, please. And you should get an explanation of any test you're going to get and what the results mean. You can ask for copies of these, and you can also carry that health information and other information like insurance with you when you're going to work, say. Next slide, please. And understanding your medicines, what are their names, what are you taking them, and knowing how to call your pharmacy too and get refills for your prescriptions. And all of these can be found on this website, which I'm going to ask Jeff to type into the chat box. So if you're interested in going to this list, you can go to that website and download it. I want to mention at this point, I'll be showing a number of other websites that have cool tools for you and your families to use to plan your healthcare transition, to be your own healthcare advocate. Jeff will be typing all those into the chat box. If you're having trouble getting hold of any of that information though, I'm going to put my email address up at the end of this talk, and you can email me and tell me you're having trouble getting some of this information, and I will both email you the website, and also I can print some lists and stuff if that's something that would be more helpful for you. Next slide, please. Insurance is a whole other thing to understand. Usually that's something people understand later, but it is important to keep a list of addresses and telephone numbers of all your doctors and nurses. So say you go to an emergency room, you can tell them who your usual doctor is. Next. And some people, people mentioned using lists. Some people keep a notebook with all their medical information, medicines they take, history, like operations they had, doctor reports. And sometimes my patients ask me to write a short summary of their health that they can put in that notebook. Next slide, please. If you're seeing a doctor that's a doctor for kids right now, a pediatric doctor, you and your pediatric doctor should be talking about how and when you should start seeing an adult doctor. If you discuss it with your doctor ahead of time, your pediatrician may be able to make a good referral for you, tell you a doctor they think would work well with you if they know you well. And then it's always good to meet with your new doctor before you switch from your old doctor. Next, please. I know that sounds like a lot to do, but it doesn't have to happen all at once. The key to it is what's called a transition plan, which is learning how to do all of these things a little bit at a time. Just like Ken pointed out, it kind of took him his whole life to learn to do all of that stuff. It didn't all have to happen the day he turned 21. And you can work on the plan with your family and any other helpers or supporters, and then practice. Ken mentioned practicing talking to his doctor. There are a lot of things like that that you really get better at with practice. Next slide, please. This is another email address that site address that I'd like Jeff to put in our chat box, please. This is another way you can do transition planning. It gives you a self-assessment of how well you're doing. What are you doing now? Do you know your medicines right now, or is that something you need to work on? And ask you a lot of interesting questions. Next slide, please. And it has your parents do the same thing. They also assess if they think you're ready to kind of solo or you're still needing help in all these areas. And then it takes that information and helps you develop a family transition plan in all these areas. So you can write stuff down like, okay, mom will remind me to take my medicine every day for 2 weeks. And then I'm going to start taking over the morning medicines and try and remember that on my own. So those are the sort of transition plans. And again, the Florida HATS website can get you straight to those planning guides. Next slide, please. And this is just, we're not going to do anything with these, but it's just an idea of how these look. Like, I can tell someone what my diagnosis, disability, or health condition is, and then your choice is, you would be saying this about yourself, I can do this on my own, or I know how to do this and I can direct others to do it, or I do this with some help, or you know what, I'm not doing this at all right now, I need a lot of help. Every answer is fine here, they're all the right answer. What it does is it gives you an idea of what things you still need to work on. And then you can see your progress as you work on your transition plan. Next slide, please. This is one where, this is just another part of that where it shows all the different categories that they ask you about. Next slide, please. And again, similar. This actually looks like a copy. Next slide, please. And this is sort of your personal tasks, not just taking care of your medicines, but are you able to bathe yourself, or is that something you still need help with? What are your daily medical tasks? Some people need to deal with equipment to help their medical tasks or other problems, so they just need to be able to do those things on their own or with help. It's part of the planning to know what you're going to need help with. Next slide, please. And then this is the family worksheet. So this is like basic knowledge. My child will, this would be from your parents' perspective, or I will help my child to learn more about his or her health condition. And then you and your family would write down specific goals and activities that would help you learn more about your health condition. Go on to the next slide, please. And the next. So this is another resource for healthcare transition. It is similar to the one I just showed you, but it also has planning tools available in Spanish. So I wanted to make sure that we got you that website as well. Next. And that transition plan has 5 steps, which includes taking that self-assessment online rather than writing it down on paper. And it also has a nifty way of organizing your health information so that you can take it with you when you go to doctor's appointments. Next slide, please. So this is my last question to you. There's a lot of work. It looks like there's a lot of different tasks that you need to do to be healthy. And sometimes it can be a lot of work. Thinking about your diet, your exercise, taking medications, talking to doctors. So one question I think is really important is, why be healthy? Why put all that work into being healthy? For example, I told you that I wanted to be at a healthy weight. So I do stuff like diet and exercise to be at a healthy weight. But why do I want to be at a healthy weight? It's because when my family goes hiking, I don't want to be the person lagging behind and huffing and puffing. I want to be right up there with them. Right? So that's the reason I want to be healthy. That's the reason I want to be at a healthy weight, is to do the activities that my family likes to do, because they're all really athletic and me, not so much. So why is it? Why be healthy? And I see you all got right onto the Mentimeter and are doing the answers. To feel better, to be happy, to have energy, to be strong. These are all great answers. It's why it's worth all the work to be healthy. I'll wait and see if we get any more. Happiness, to get out and do things, to be around people. Yes, yes. When we're healthy, we're more active, we can be out, we can socialize. And again, that's important. It's important for both our physical health and our mental health to be healthy, to get to do these things. Getting a girlfriend, see, that's a very good, specific reason, and a very worthwhile one, of course. Making friends, having a girlfriend, living a long time, these are all reasons to be healthy. Can we go to the next slide, please? And we've already sort of covered that, so I'd like to just leave some time for questions. This is just one final resource. It's another website called Taking Charge of My Health that gives you also access to a lot of other resources on other websites, so it's sort of a gateway website. And also, this was developed by some experts in health, but also by Mitchell Levitz, who is a young man with Down syndrome who actually helped develop the website and has written a chapter in a book on being healthy. So I just include his email, just in case anyone has any interest in a peer who has sort of become an expert in this area. Next slide, please. So I'm going to leave my email up. The other person on the email on the slide is Valerie Mata, who helps me with a lot of my health activities. And so I've put her email up, and then of course the telephone number to reach her at the Sonora News Ed. And while we've got that up, I would just like, I think we have a little bit of time to answer any questions or anything that anybody else would like to add to the discussion. And they can be questions for me or for Ken.
We had a comment in the chat box from E. Montano, just sharing a resource, Resilient Arizona Crisis Counseling Program, that provides free counseling and connection to community resources for anyone affected or impacted by COVID-19. Regardless of insurance, income, services are confidential, and there's a number there for different regions throughout the state. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's always great to share resources. That's another good thing about being in a group like this. So any questions or comments or concerns, anything that any of this made you think about? Just put up a hand or type something. Well, thanks everybody. If we don't have any questions, I'm gonna let you get off the computer so you can get some exercise.